Good morning, church fam. It's good to see everybody this morning. I know a lot of people are out sick and traveling, so welcome if you're watching online as well. It's good to be here as we start a brand new series. And I want to ask you a question as we start this series for Christmas, for December. And the question is, what is it that the world needs now? If you had to fill in the blank, what is it that the world needs now is, and you would say, or what is it that you need right now? Some people might fill in that and say, I need money, right? Money's not a bad thing. Money's a great thing. You know, it can buy lots of resources. It can be a blessing to be able to give some away. Some people might say, yes, we need more money. I need more income. But ultimately, we know that money cannot buy happiness. It can buy temporary pleasures. But ultimately, what is the point of money if I'm not happy? Some people might say, we need more love. We need more relationships. I need a relationship right now. That's what the world needs. What does the world need? I need relationship. We need just more love. And ultimately, that is true also, but relationships are good until they're not. Marriage is good until it's not any longer. Or somebody might say, what I just need is happiness. The world needs more happiness. The problem with happiness is ultimately we're happy based off what is happening. If things are happening well, I'm happy. If things aren't happening well, I'm not happy. What I would probably argue through this series, and I hope that you'll see it, is what the world actually needs and what you need is more peace. What we need is peace. It's interesting, over the last decade, since 2010, Jonathan Haidt writes in his book, The Anxious Generation. And he writes how generation after generation over the last decade, since 2010, has been increasing with anxiety. In fact, some of the numbers he gave was very, very interesting, as he says Generation X over the last decade has gone up in anxiety 52% for Generation X. As we have cell phones in the palm of our hands, as we have social media, as we have this constant dinging in our ears and at our fingertips, we've moved into this digital media era, and it has created anxiety. In fact, a lot of people have their phones sitting right by their beds, and they say that that's the most horrible thing you can do, because ultimately, as soon as you hear the ding on your phone, your brain instantly activates. It instantly goes in. A lot of people don't get good night's sleep because of that constant dinging over and over again. It's gone up 52%. For millennials, over the last decade, anxiety has increased by 103%. Notice, generation after generation, it's getting worse. And Jonathan Haidt ultimately says, as Gen Z, it has gone up 139% in the last decade. There's a graph that should be on the screen just to show you this trend that has gone up year after year after year. It has continued to increase. And not only does it give us an increase in anxiety, 134% since 2010, but it also adds, and you'll see, depression goes along with it. What I would argue is that people are missing peace. They're missing peace out of their lives because their mind is constantly running. Their anxiety is constantly running. Anxiety is increasing all throughout the world for generation after generation. And we're missing this concept of peace, a peace that ultimately God offers, a peace that ultimately Christmas is all about. Peace. that Jesus stepped into the scene, that God came down, that he was incarnate into a baby in order to reconcile us to the Father. He is offering us peace. And we're missing it all the time. See, a lot of times because we're missing peace is we think the peace is the absence of something. Peace is the absence of conflict. Peace is absence of people fighting. Peace is the absence of something. But what if I was to argue that peace is not the absence of something? Peace is actually of something else being present, something greater being present in the situation or equation. The word peace in the Old Testament is referred to as the word shalom. Shalom is the Hebrew word for peace. And ultimately, when they would use the word shalom, they would use it for a greeting. They would use it to say goodbye. They would say shalom. Shalom means that there is no gaps. That means everything is complete. In fact, when the temple was built, they wanted to make sure that there was no gaps between any of the bricks, that it was completely complete. It was shalom. It means wholeness, completeness, reconciling relationships. The opposite of shalom is the opposite of peace, where it means that we're divided, that we're torn apart, that we're torn in two. And if you've ever had it where your mind is racing at night, it feels like your body is tired, but your mind is going, that you are torn apart, that you're torn in two. You don't know what direction to turn to. Do I go to the right or do I go to the left? Do I make this decision or do I make that decision? And it increases our anxiety within because we are torn apart. We do not have peace. We do not have wholeness. We do not have shalom. See, peace is this shalom that the Bible is offering, this reconciling. It means alive in a state of well-being. I am in a state of peace. I know where I need to go. I can rest when I need to rest. My mind is not divided. I'm not torn in two. I'm not going in opposite directions. I'm not going to the left and to the right. I'm not going swayed this way and that way. I have the state of peace. A lot of times we think, well, as long as we take away the external conflict, then we'll have peace. And what I'm going to show you in a story this morning is it's not about taking away something. It's about adding something to it. It's not about the removal of the external. In fact, in the book of Revelation, we see this picture that the Apostle John gives us. And in Revelation 4, looking at the new heavens and the new earth, the Apostle John gets this vision. As he gets this vision of what the new heavens and the new earth is going to look like, he gets a vision of the throne room of God, and he gives us this picture here, the throne of heaven, and he's transported in a vision to see God and Jesus, and he's in the throne room of heaven. And here's what it says in verse 1 through 6. After this, I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven, and a voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, "Come up here, John, and I will show you what must take place after this." At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven, and someone was sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. What are they doing? They're worshiping Jesus on the throne. They're worshiping the sacrificial lamb. They're worshiping the Son of God. It says, from the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. In front of the throne, 7 lamps were blazing. 7 because it's the number of completion again for God. The number of shalom. There were 7 spirits of God. Also in front of the throne, there was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. Now, I think this is interesting because what John sees is a sea of glass. If you've ever picked up an ornament going through a shop and just see a covered over sea of what looks like glass, it just looks like this beautiful, calm scenery. If you've ever been up north and you've seen a lake freeze over where people can actually walk across and ice skate it, it's just this calm, serene setting. It's this moment of peace. And what's interesting, if you know anything historically, is that ultimately this sea of glass, what John is talking about in Revelation, is that the Eastern mythology is that the wind and the waves and the surrounding of the sea was often a place of chaos. You see, in Genesis 1, when it says that the Spirit came down and he began to order all the things, he said, I'm going to put the land here, I'm going to put the waves here. It was a place of chaos. The Spirit was hovering over the waters, and God began to order all the events, but the sea was often seen as a place of chaos, a place of torment, a place of waves. In fact, one person writes it like this: the sea in ancient Near Eastern mythology was the place of chaos, not peace. It was the home of chaos, dragon Leviathan. It was always churning and never at rest. And so here it's the sea of chaos, the sea of a dragon, the sea of complete destruction. And yet what John gets in the middle of the throne room, in the middle of the chaos, is a glance of glass of peace. He says, I can have peace at the feet of the throne. I can have peace in the presence of God. I can have peace in this moment right here. It's calm. Everything around me is chaotic. Everything around me is going crazy. Everything around me is absolutely chaos. But here with Jesus, it's complete peace. See, the argument that I want to make to you is that peace is not found in the absence of our problems. Peace is not found in the absence of our problems, but in the presence of God. Let me just say that again, so for some of you who might want to write that down. Peace is not found in the absence of our problems, but it is found in the presence of God. I'm going to take this entire message talking about the source of our peace in order to prove to you that peace is found when God is here, when he's with you. He is what gives us peace. It is not found in removing your situation, removing your problems, removing anything external. It is found in having Jesus with us. It is found in the presence of God. See, there's another story which John was part of. There's another sea where John experienced peace in the middle of a storm. Where John not only saw this sea of glass in the new heavens and the new earth, but John, as he was walking with Jesus, as he was sailing with Jesus, Jesus sails him into a storm. John finds God's presence in the middle of chaos. I want to show you, if we go to Mark chapter 4. It says in verse 35, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. This is Jesus talking. He says, hey, let's travel over to the land of the Gentiles over there. Let's bring our teaching over there. Let's bring some of our healing over there. Let's travel across the Sea of Galilee. Let's go to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along. Just as he was in the boat, there was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Can you imagine? Sea of Galilee is 13 miles long. It's 8 miles wide. And here they're in the middle of this sea. They're trying to go across to the other side. They still got a few miles to roll, and suddenly a furious storm came up. A storm that they were so scared of that they asked Jesus himself, don't you care that we're going to drown? They thought they were going to die. It was swamping the boat. It was capsizing. They were about to go under, and they begin to panic. These were fishermen. They sailed this sea all the time, but it was such a ferocious storm that this one time they thought they were all going to die. It shows us that even the disciples found themselves in the middle of a storm. You see, Jesus does not say that he's going to remove the storms out of our life if we follow him. In fact, he doesn't say if a storm comes, he tells us when a storm comes. He tells us we are, as Christians, as his followers, we are going to face storms in this life. He tells us that we are not arrived in heaven yet, and we are going to experience storms. There's so many people that think, well, if I follow Jesus, if I do the right thing, then suddenly God is just going to remove all the storms out of my life. God is just going to make it easy sailing, and when things do not go easy, we wonder, where is God in this moment? Just because we're Christian doesn't mean that we do not face storms. The disciples find themselves in the middle of a storm. And sure enough, storms blow for us as well. Storms rise up. There's financial storms where we don't know where we're going to make the next payment. There's relationship storms where everything seems to fall apart. There's relationships at work with our bosses that things just don't seem to be going well, or maybe you even lose a job, or you get that phone call of a health concern, and it's like, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that cancer come up. I didn't see that situation come up. I was diagnosed with this, and I didn't see that coming. We get these storms in life. I didn't see that bill. I didn't see that health concern. We get these storms, and we're like, God, where are you in this? The disciples felt so desperate in the middle of this storm that they thought they were going to die. They thought life was absolutely over. They thought the sea was going to swallow them whole. Sometimes we feel that way, don't we? Where the storms of life rise up and it feels like it's just going to swallow us. That our problem is too much for us to bear. That we just can't take any more on. And what's interesting is, why did the disciples endure this storm? Why did Jesus or God allow them to endure this storm? Maybe it's something they needed to learn. Let me remind you, who was it in the beginning that led them into the storm? It says in verse 35 that it is Jesus who said, let us go to the other side. You're telling me that Jesus didn't know that there was going to be a storm? Jesus, who even predicted his death and his resurrection, who was God in the flesh, he knew there was going to be a storm. He led his disciples into it, which brings up a whole bunch of theological questions for us that obviously God wanted to show them and teach them and display something to them. What is it that God was trying to show them? He says, hey, let me lead you in the middle of this storm, and when you think that the boat is going to sink, I'm going to be sleeping in the bow of the boat. Maybe because he wanted to show them how to handle anxiety. Maybe he wanted to show them that I can give you peace even in this. Maybe he wanted to display to them, this is what it means to have true peace. So why did Jesus allow the disciples to endure the storm? Because peace is not found in the absence of something. Peace is found in the middle of the storm. Even us as believers, even us as Christians, we're going to have storms in life, and God knew it. So he wants to show us and display to us that this is what it means to have peace. How to have peace in an ancient world. And I'm going to give you 3 ways that we see from this story how to have peace in an anxious world. If you're taking notes, you should write this down. If you're on the app, you should fill these blanks in. Peace comes from when we pause and we acknowledge him. When we pause and we acknowledge him. Notice in Mark 4:38, this is what it says. Jesus was in the stern of the boat and he was sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Jesus is sleeping on a cushion. He's fast asleep. He had complete peace as they were freaking out. You're in a storm in his presence, and Jesus ultimately is sleeping. He is so caught up in dreaming that he doesn't even care about the storm. We get so caught up in the what, which is the storm, the what of our situation, the what of our circumstance, that we get caught up that we lose sight of who is in the boat with us. That ultimately Jesus is sleeping. We get caught up in the what and we forget all about the who. You see, we need to take the time to see that Jesus is present, that Jesus is with us, to pause and acknowledge him, to pause and acknowledge God, the one who is more powerful than the what. The one that ultimately can handle our situation, the one that can handle our storm. He can do something about it. Many of times we freak out all about the chaos of the situation and we can't even do anything about it because we have no power or control to do anything about it. We want power and control, but we don't have it. But ultimately we forget to turn to the one who has all the power, all the control, because we're too focused on dealing it by ourselves than giving it over to him. We have to remember the one who is with us, the one who is in the boat. So we need to stop and pause and acknowledge him. They turned to Jesus and they said, "Don't you care?" See, Jesus never promised that we would not experience the storm. What he promised is that we would not be alone in the storm, that he would be present with us in the storm, that he is in the boat, and the one who is in the boat is greater than the storm on the outside of the boat. The one who is in the boat controls the situation on the outside of the boat. As long as he's in the boat with you, your who is greater than your what, and he promises to never leave you and never forsake you. In Deuteronomy 31:6, it says this: "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you, nor what? Forsake you." He will never leave you. This is a concept all throughout Scripture. Joshua 1:5, where it says, "No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. I was with Moses, so I will be with you." He's present. He's with us. "I will never leave you nor forsake you." What about Joshua 1:9? He says it again. "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God is" what? "With you." He's here. He's present. He's with you. And he's with you wherever you go. Or Psalm 23, which we just memorized in our last series. In verse 4, where it says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." For why? You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. God is present. He is with us. Or Matthew 28:20, where right before he ascends into heaven and sits at the right hand of the Father, he promises the Holy Spirit that he will come and live inside of us. He will be with us if we're a believer in Jesus Christ. He will guide us to the right or to the left. He will bring us peace. He will bring us shalom. And he promises in Matthew 28, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. You see, the whole point of Christmas is that God stepped off of his throne and came down into this world and took on flesh and blood as a baby because he wanted to be with his creation. He wanted to walk with his creation. He wanted to experience temptations like his creation. He wanted to overcome those temptations, and he wanted to set a model of what it is to walk this life together. He wanted to dwell with his people. That's what Christmas is that we celebrate, that God is with us. That's what the word Emmanuel means, that Jesus was going to be called Emmanuel, God with us. God is present in our storms. He's present in our boats. And there wasn't just one storm that day. There were two storms. There was the storm that was happening on the outside, the squall that came up that was about to sink the boat. But even worse and more fierce of a storm that was happening on the outside was probably what was happening on the inside. It was the storm of their anxiety, the storm of their fear, the storm that we're going to die and we don't know what's going to happen next. The storm that freaked them out where they said, Jesus, don't you care? And isn't that the truth, that sometimes the storm that's going on inside of you is worse that's going on the outside? Isn't the storm that's going on in your mind, the storm that's going on in your heart, the storm that doesn't allow you to eat, the storm that makes you unsettled in your stomach, the storm that even makes you want to vomit sometimes? It's a storm of anxiety that's happening within. I'm just not settled. I'm just not have peace. It's something missing. Don't you care, Jesus? That's what they said to him. Don't you care? Don't you care if we drown? Don't you love me? And isn't that sometimes what we ask God? Don't you care that I'm going through this? When someone is standing at the edge of a graveside after someone they loved and they had to say goodbye. God, where are you in this? Don't you care? Or somebody broke up with somebody recently. And it's like, God, don't you care? And as you're standing by that graveside, yes, God whispers and says, I do care. You are not alone. When someone breaks up with somebody and you feel isolated and alone, God is whispering, saying, I am here with you. I am your presence. I am your firm foundation. You don't need anybody else. I am here. Or you lose your job and you're like, God, don't you care? And he says, yes, I will provide for you. I will protect you. I will lead you and guide you into another one. I am here with you even in this. God is with us. And Jesus says, be still and know that I am in the store with you. I am in the storm with you. Psalm 46:10 says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Jesus is the one who gives us peace. And ultimately, we cannot have peace. We cannot speak peace if we don't have peace, but Jesus is the one who speaks the peace. Jesus is the one that hands over the peace. That's why when we say, don't you care, Jesus got up and showed them that he does care. Jesus got up, it says, and he rebuked the winds. In verse 39, it says, he got up, rebuked the winds, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. Jesus wanted to show that he had authority over the wind. He had authority over the waves. He had the authority over all the problems. He was in full control and he wanted to display it to his disciples. He wanted to teach his disciples. He led them into the storm. He led them in the middle of the sea and he displayed to them that I have control even over this. He wanted to show them. So he says, when they said, hey, do you care, Jesus? He says, yes, I care. Yes, I love you. Be calm, be quiet, be still, because I am greater in the boat than any storm you are facing on the outside of the boat. I will give you peace. See, storms come and storms go. In fact, many people, you're either going into a storm, you're going through a storm, or you're coming out of a storm, because storms are all through different seasons of life. You're either going in right now, you're going through, or you're coming out. And wherever you're at in that process, Jesus is present and he is with you. And he says, if you want peace, then what you need to do is you need to learn to trust that he ultimately has the power over chaos. You need to trust that he has the power over chaos. You need to trust in the one who is in the boat. He rebuked with all authority and he spoke it, and everything calmed down. What's cool about this is that Peter was the one who was freaking out. Peter was one of those disciples who was completely going into chaos mode. And he's like, Jesus, don't you care? How can you be sleeping in a time like this? Peter was a fisherman. Peter was used to storms. Peter had been in so many different storms as a fisherman, but in this situation, he freaked out. And what's interesting is later on, Peter writes these words. As he was freaking out in the moment, asking Jesus, do you care? He puts a pen to paper later on after Jesus' death and resurrection. When he's preaching to the churches, he writes this letter for all of us to leave behind. And he says in 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. You see, Peter learned in that moment that Jesus cares for him. He says, don't you care? And later on he says, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Peter learned that Jesus can take everything from him. This word cast in the Greek means to transfer over. It literally is only used 2 times, and the second time it's translated as transfer. Transfer the weight off of you. Transfer from you onto somebody else. This weight that you're carrying around, transfer it over. Cast it over to Jesus. He says, doesn't just drop the weight. The thought process is if I drop the weight, if I'm bench pressing and I drop the weight, I'm dropping it on me. He says, no, take it off of you and put it on to somebody else. Help them take it off and remove it off of you. It's like a spotter who removes the weight off of us and helps you rack it back. Jesus picks up the weight that we cannot push up, that we cannot carry anymore, that's weighing us down. If I just drop it on me, it's going to crush me. But he removes it off of us. And he says, cast it over to Jesus. Call out to him. Cry out to him. Tell him, I need help. I can't lift this anymore. And as you cry out to Jesus, he removes the weight off of you and he racks it where you couldn't do it anymore. Cast all of your burdens onto him. But do you really believe that he's all powerful? Do you really believe that he cares? Do you really believe that he's in your situation and cares what you are going through? Do you really believe that he's in this with you, that he's in the boat? You see, there's a big difference between knowing, God, I know you're powerful, but do you really trust that he's powerful? Are you willing to cast it over, or are you still holding on to it? Are you still trying to lift it off your chest? Are you still trying to carry the weight around? Are you saying, God, I just need some help with this, but don't worry, I got it. I know you can lift it off me, but I got to carry this around because I'm strong and I'm stubborn and I got to do this my own. I got to do this for myself. What does it mean to cast it over? See, when you're going through the middle of the storm, Jesus says, I'm going to restore all things. I'm going to bring peace to the situation. In Revelation, John shows us this glass of peace. Jesus calms the storm and there's peace. Jesus is the one who can give us peace. Jesus is the one who can make all things new. He can take us from a storm of a situation and we cast it onto him. When we truly trust him, when we truly give it over to him, we suddenly get this wave of peace. Jesus is going to make all things new. He's going to restore all things. He tells us that he brings healing to those who are depressed. He will bring joy to those who ultimately mourn. He will end all the rejection. In Revelation, it tells us that he will wipe every tear from our eyes. When we ask, does he really care? He says, yes, I do. I'm going to make all things new. But until that day comes, until the new heaven and the new earth, where we don't have any storms, where we don't have any problems, where we don't have any situations, we're going through this life right now. And we need to realize that he is here in the boat with us. It's not the removal of the storm. It's not the removal of the problem that's going to bring you peace. Sometimes he's leading us through this problem or this situation because he knows if we never faced any problems, if we never faced any situations or difficulties, then we would never turn to him. We would just think that we have peace because life is easy. He wants to show us that it's not based on our happiness or what is happening in our life. It is based on him being present with us that gives us peace, that we can take all of our problems in the middle of our situation, that we can find peace inside the boat with Jesus, that we can find peace in his presence, that Jesus will make all things new. Until he makes all things new, we gather in the boat together. You see, this is what the church is all about. To gather in the boat. This is why God gives us church. It's where we come and where we go to receive peace, that we have people pray over us, that we have people walk with us. We have fellowship and friendship because we're all in this boat together. Jesus wasn't in the boat with just Peter. Jesus was in the boat with the 12. He wanted to show all 12 what it meant to be in fellowship with one another. See, I see this all the time, that people, they begin to only come to church once in a while. They begin to only show up, it's like, oh, I need a dose of God and then I live my life. I need a dose of God and I live my life. And every time I need a dose of God, I come back to church. And what you're doing is you're facing the storm by yourself. God never meant it to be like that. It seems like if this is a place where I can cast all of my burdens onto the Lord, if I can give everything that I have right now facing challenge with today, because there's so many different challenges, why would I not do that more often? Because he's speaking peace into your life. The one who is peace speaks peace. The one who is peace says, be calm, be still. I'm in control. I have authority. And as long as I'm in the boat with you, you are safe. You're protected. I got you. You're not rowing by yourself. You're not doing this on your own. I am with you, and I have authority over all things. It seems to me that we would want to be more often in his presence. We would want to be more often dropping the weight onto him. We would want to be more often saying, I need to rest, Jesus. I need the peace of Jesus, and so I'm going to rest in you. So I need to get to this boat more often. I need to get inside the boat more often. I need to find this boat more often. This is what the church is for. That every single week we can come and experience peace. Every single week we can find our boat right here, right now. With Jesus here, he's present. There are people here who are present with you. And we can cast all of our burdens from us onto him. See, the third thing to find peace, you should write this down, is that we need to cultivate his peace daily. We need to cultivate his peace daily. John 14:27 is the promise that he gives to us. The one who is peace is willing to give us peace. As he says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. How many of us are in the world every single day? How many of us are in the world so many hours out of the week? And if we miss a Sunday, if we miss the boat, if we miss time with Jesus, we're being filled up with all these things of the world. He says, I don't give you peace like the world. My peace is different. The world gives you chaos. The world gives you anxiety. The world gives you problems. The world gives you the storm. The world is to point you to Jesus. It's to point you to the boat. It's to point you to peace. That's what the world is for. He says, I don't give you like the world. He contrasts with the world. He says, no, do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid, because I am the one who gives you a different kind of peace. I am the one who gives you a divine peace. In the middle of your storm, in the middle of your situation, you can find peace as long as you're with me. You cannot speak what you do not have. Jesus spoke because he had peace, and he's offering you that peace today. He wants to show you that he is with you. And so what I want to do is I just want to give us some time to cast all of our problems on the Lord. I want to give us some time to worship and just whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, just to remind you that you are not alone. That this is God's boat right here. The church is God's boat, and he is present and with us. He is in this space. He cares about what you're going through. He cares about every need that you have. He knows it, and he cares about it. He weeps over it, and he wants to show you that he can lead you and guide you and give you peace even in this. If you're missing peace this morning, I'm just going to ask for you to bow your head and close your eyes. I believe wholeheartedly that God wants to offer you the peace that he has. I don't know what your problem is this morning. I don't know your situation, but I know the one who does. And he says, come to me, all those who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. If you want a relationship with Jesus, he's opening up his arms to you. All you do is have to allow him to come in. Romans 10:8-9 says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that he was raised from the dead, you will be saved. He's offering peace. He's offering reconciliation. He's offering shalom in the middle of the chaos. Whatever you're going through this morning, Jesus wants to give it to you. All you do is have to pray it up to him. Open up your mouth and believe in your heart. That's what it means to put him in the boat. Is I'm not going to lead. I'm not going to steer my own boat. I'm not going to row my own boat. I'm going to believe in the one who is in this boat with me. I'm going to follow after him. I'm going to let him guide me. I'm going to let him lead me. I'm going to stop rowing, and I'm going to give it all to him this morning. I'm going to transfer the weight over. If you want to do that for the very first time, all you do is have to open up your mouth and confess that Jesus is Lord. Just pray it with me. Father, I know that I'm a sinner. I've been rowing my boat for so long. But I believe that Jesus died on the cross for me. I believe he stepped into this world for me. I believe that he was raised for the dead for me. And now I want to follow him the rest of the days of my life. I want to put him inside my boat. So help me to follow him. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If you're going through anything this morning, you're not by yourself. Our prayer partners want to pray with you and for you. So as we go into this final song of just worship, I'm going to ask for our prayer partners to come forward. And if you have any prayer requests, just come down forward and just let them know, just whisper in their ear what you're going through, and they want to pray with you. You're not by yourself. You're not alone in this journey. This is what the church is for. This is what it means to be in the boat, to have people walk with you, to have people pray with you, to have people help you. You're not alone. Let God show you that this is a space where you can take whatever you're carrying and you can remove it from your shoulders onto somebody else. Let these prayer warriors be your connectors between you and your Father. If you have any prayers, feel free to come forward as we go into this final worship song. Let's stand to our feet and let's worship God.